Senator Witkos.
Thank you, Madam President. I rise in opposition to the jobs bill before us, and mainly falls on the cost, Madam President. In shortly under 9 hours, this General Assembly will have approved the spending of close to $1 billion, and I believe it's $1 billion that we don't have. And by this authorization, we would have firmed up our position as the #1 state in the country with the highest capital debt. And again, I don't think that's something that we should be proud of. Going through the bill, we heard most of this is in general obligation bonding, $700 million. That's on the state's credit card. It'll cost us close to $1.1 billion to pay it back. Then we see that in fiscal year 12, there's a negative impact on the general fund and revenues of $9.3 million. We're certainly running close to watching the monthly analysis from the Comptroller's Office and OFA as we make sure our state budget is balanced. I think that's going to have a severe impact on those predictions. Just want to go through a couple sections of the bill, if I may. Sections 1 through 3, we talk about how we're creating jobs. Well, the very first section of the bill talks about creating 2 jobs. Those are state employee jobs. The cost of $150,000 plus benefits. They're for staffers to implement a program. And then there's a quantifier in the language that says, however, if the program's successful, there are more applications that receive, we may have to hire more additional staffing. I thought we were just going through the summer saying we have to streamline state government. This is an expansion of state government. Under the Bond Commission, the new program which authorizes $20 million for the STEP program, we say that you're allowed to hire an outside contractor to administer the program of $800,000. For the life of me, I don't know why we couldn't find the personnel to do that in-house for a lot cheaper. There's a section later on in the bill which talks about privatization, which I'll get to, but here's a prime example of a cost close to $1 million for something that I believe we could have handled in-house. Section 6 talks about another study out of the Department of Energy and Environmental Protection. When we did the large bill, the big energy bill during the session, there was a lot of discussion with the administration saying, please don't ask us to do another study. You don't have to do that in legislation. Just ask us, we'll get it done. But here we've decided to put it in legislation to do another study. And this has to be done by February 1st, just in a few short months. And then there's a section that talks about the New York's Build Now, New York's Shovel Ready. So this sounded somewhat familiar, developed recommendations. So I kind of went online, I had some time to search, and I found a report of the Permitting Task Force to Governor Rell dated April 2010. Authorized under Executive Order number 39, which basically has the same similar recommendations as to what we should do in the state of Connecticut that we're asking another one of our agencies to go and investigate to see if we can implement. So I think we have to do our homework before we start asking agencies to do things, but I think it's already done. Section 10 requires OPM to consult for services, but then there's the catchphrase, within available appropriations. Well, we all know what that means. That means, guess what? There's no cost to it because we won't do it if there's no money, but it sounds good. So let's put it in there because maybe that'll help push the bill along. As long as it's within available appropriations, nobody can complain because there's no cost. But there's going to be a cost to it if we have to do it. Section 11 requires the DOT, the DECD, to make recommendations to certain of our standing committees, and what they're asking them to do is to look at the revision, the repeal of any agency or program or statute relating to such agency where it's determined to be obsolete or in need of revision for making the operations or procedures of the program or provision more efficient. There is no anticipated fiscal impact. How can there not be any fiscal impact to an agency if we found that the provision is obsolete or if we found that the provision is in need of revision Why are we visiting these things if there's no fiscal impact to the state? If it's not going to be cheaper for us, why were we doing this? But we're saying do this on one hand because we believe there may be some situations where we can streamline and we can save money, but in the same sentence we're saying there's no anticipated impact. We heard earlier that the business entity tax, well, that's nice to go back to talk to our constituents and say, guess what, we cut it in half. But you got to wait 3 years for that. I mean, for my small businesses, big deal. That's what they're going to tell me. Big deal. Thanks a lot. I didn't need to go on a jobs tour to hear what my business say, because I'm out in my communities every single day. In the grocery store, every impact where you ask for a service or you're buying something, people know that you're a legislator, and they're giving you the suggestions as to how to improve their business, and that is to get off their backs and get out of the way. I would much rather have seen us spend $1 billion in reducing mandates and taking the hit than adding monies, spending more money to hopefully prop up our business community. I don't know how the wine permit got into a jobs bill. We're saying, well, that sounds like a good lobbyist had an in and said, hey, how about letting us have one more wine festival in the state of Connecticut? Everybody likes to have a good glass of wine. So something that specific lands in a big jobs bill. There's only 16 wineries in the state of Connecticut. It's not going to create any jobs. Section 24 through 27 talks about setting up a brownfield remediation. Well, we have a Superfund site in the state of Connecticut, and that fund has $17.5 million in it. And there are 13 sites listed on that list that need to be cleaned up. And we can't get those cleaned up. What makes you think that if we spend taxpayers' money, $20 million, that it's going to have a better impact? As a matter of fact, one of the communities that I represent, in the town of Canton, Swift Chemical, was the reason why they created the Superfund site. It is the #1 site on the list. You can check that on your computer. It's been on there for over 12 years. And we can't get it cleaned up yet, the #1 listing. And there's $17.5 million sitting in the fund. The cost of cleanup is $4 million. Why haven't we taken any action on that? It's beyond me. But now we're asking taxpayers to fund another $20 million in general obligation bonds, which is going to cost us more because we're charging it basically to pay back. I agree that manufacturers have spoken about the lack of trained students coming out of the colleges that they can employ in their manufacturing firms when I visit my Chamber of Commerce's. And maybe it is a good investment of $17.8 million. But the result of that $17.8 million is an annual operating increase cost of $800,000 every year at the regional community colleges. I better not see a tuition increase request from these community colleges because of an increase in student enrollment, because we're paying for it out of this bill. The First Five program, there is one limitation, and it's what we've agreed to put on the bonding, on the general bonding, which is $340 million. So my understanding is that DECD, with approval of the governor, can award up to the $340 million for one entity, or it can go as little as $1. That's ultimate discretion on that. As I said before, during the First Five program the first time, the provision that removed, specifically number 3, exempts the projects from legislative approval, which the law requires for financial assistance and certain tax credits above specified amounts. I think that's wrong. This is the body, the legislative branch of government, that appropriates the dollars spent at taxpayers' expense. And for us to have no legislative approval over these projects is not right. The airport zone expansion, well, I think it's a good idea. I noticed that the language states that if a municipality wants to be reimbursed, they have to apply to the Comptroller's office by August 1st with the amount that they're requesting for reimbursement, or the Treasurer's office, and the Treasurer has to pay them back by December 31st. Most municipalities operate on a June 30 fiscal year. Most of their taxes are due by June 30th. So now they're going to wait 6 months into their next fiscal year to see if they get reimbursement because of the creation of the airport zone expansion. The captive audience section, look, we're never going to compete with the Bahamas. When we passed that language several years ago, we said, let's open the gate to see if anybody comes to our state, because we knew that the Bahamas is the capital of the captive insurance market. Nobody came. And I'm not so sure that what we're offering here today is going to bring them here. But what we're doing, it's been 3 years, nobody came. We're adding another 4.5 state employee positions, plus benefits at a cost of over $500,000. Really? We just cannot afford it today. The section that really concerns me, and I don't mean to make light of it when I say it's a trick or treat, and the trick's been played on the taxpayers of Connecticut, is the privatization portion of the bill. Because it states that a cost-benefit analysis has to be done. I agree with that. If you want to privatize something or take it away from what the public employees have to do, you have to send it to the State Contracting Agency Board, the State Contracting Agency Board. If the cost-benefit analysis says, yes, it's cheaper for the taxpayers of Connecticut to privatize that particular service, then from there it goes to a State Contracting Board. If that State Contracting Board agrees with the analysis and says, yes, it makes more sense financially to privatize that service, it goes out to bid. But now we've allowed the collective bargaining agent that they can run to court and file a motion in Hartford Superior Court. And that just put the brakes on that project and added costs to that project. That's a good way to kill privatization in the state of Connecticut, even though it made sense by 2 independent boards looking at it. Madam President, I ask we put away the credit card, we get out of the way of the businesses, we offer mandate reductions, we offer, through some of these proposals, an educated workforce, which I stand behind 100%, but we just cannot continue on the path of spending because people cannot afford it, especially when we've set ourselves up with a loss to the general fund. How are we going to replenish that amount of money when the governor has said no more taxes? And now we found that agencies are unwilling to make cuts. It's going to have to come from somewhere. It's not itemized in this bill. Therefore, Madam President, I cannot support it. Thank you very much.
Thank you.